Okay, so earlier we saw details on how the AWS instance needs to be set up for us to launch Jenkins on that. So let's look at configuring those details on AWS side. So in this case, we're going to log in through the web access, through the console access. You will type this kind of URL. You of course don't have to select the region right away as part of the URL, and you can do that once you log on. Once you have AWS access done, you will see something similar to this on the screen. In this case, we're going to of course start by creating a VPC. So let's log on to VPC service, and we're going to create a new VPC as part of that. So are we going to do more than VPC? Well, let's stick with VPC only, and we'll call this Jenkins 01 for the sake of discussion, because we need to also give an IPv4 CIDR. So for sake of discussion, we'll just pick, for this video, we'll pick 10.10.00 as your CIDR block, and we're not concerned with IPv6, so we'll just forget that and not have IPv6 as part of this VPC. So once we're done configuring this, you create the VPC node. The VPC is created as simple as that, and it shows which IP subnet is you are associated with from a CIDR, from a classless inter-domain routing perspective, so which is 10.10 in this case. So let's go ahead and now create a subnet. So we'll select the appropriate VPC. Remember, we just created a new VPC, Jenkins 01. So we'll utilize that because we want to create the subnet as part of that VPC. So I'm just going to call it Jenkins subnet 01. So just something to make it simple for us to classify this VPC. What is the purpose of that, or in the subnet of that? Now we also have to give what is the actual subnet we're going to use as part of this subnet. So the CIDR block we're going to pick as part of the 10.10.16 CIDR. We're going to pick 10.10.10, class C. It's 24 mask, 24-bit mask as part of that subnet. So once we're done, we're ready. Create the subnet, and you'd see as simple as this. The subnet is already created now. So we're ready to move to the next step. So as part of our configuration order, remember we earlier talked about creating a VPC, creating a subnet, but also creating a subnet. So now we're going to move to creating an internet gateway. So we're going to create a new internet gateway. We'll call this Jenkins, let's say 01, Jenkins IGW 01. So internet gateway, let's just call this. It's quite simple. You have that name tag, so you can classify and easy to search on this. Okay, so the other thing just you notice on the IGW configuration is it would show as detached, so it hasn't been connected to any VPC so far. So what we can do is attach that to a VPC, and of course we want to connect it to a VPC which is available and unattached at the moment, and that should take care of that. It shows up as attached now. Now we go back and look at some of the routing tables. So by default, when VPC is created and subnets have been done, note there is a default routing table, a main routing table that has been created. So let's look at that routing table, which is associated with the Jenkins 1 VPC. What you note in this one, by default, it has the 10.10, the CIDR, that we created as part of the VPC. It's already, it has a route to it. What we want to do, going back to our picture of topology, this is our IGW, and any traffic that is going out from this VPC to unknown destination, we want it basically routed towards the internet. So that's what we'll do. We'll create a new route, and of course we'll add a new route, and we'll say any unknown destination. What we want to do is send it towards IGW. So Internet Gateway, if I could type, and here we go. That's the Jenkins IGW that we created earlier. That is something we'll route the traffic towards to it. So perfect. So now in the routing table, note there are two routes. This is the routing table associated with this VPC, and it has a default route going outbound towards the IGW for unknown traffic. So let's go back to our list of things that we wanted to do. We have the IGW none, we have the route table sorted out. Let's look at the security groups. So of course, security groups could be created here as well. What we want to do is create a new security group. What do we want to call it? Let's say this is Jenkins, no surprise, security group, and let's just call it 01. So what we want to do, description, anything, you say SSH, AT, and AT, and which VPC do we associate this to? It's associated to the, if you look at the info, that's the security group that hasn't been created. So let's make sure that we got the right VPC. Yeah, perfect. The C97 Jenkins 01, that's the one we're going to associate it to. Now, inbound rules, but notice by default there is no rule up here. So these are the rules which are associated for traffic coming into the VPC. So, well, what we can do is, instead of custom port, what we can do is say anything coming as SSH traffic, which is the inbound traffic. Let's just give it 000, meaning anything coming in from anywhere with the SSH rule, we will just allow that. The other thing we want to do is for testing, we could allow other ports. And again, you want to close this out, right? You want to give a certain range of CIDR blocks to allow this, but for testing, for the initial this video purpose, I'm not gonna add any specific IP address, but give it any source, meaning 000/0. So that's for port 8080. That's required at a later stage when the Jenkins VM is up. Same thing for port 80. This is HTTP traffic that we want to allow. For testing, what we can do is allow maybe ICMP from anywhere, just for initial testing, and we'll remove these rules and modify them. Same thing, outbound traffic at the moment, protocol all going to any destination is allowed. So let's leave it for that for the moment. And we don't have to give any tags, but feel free to add one. This could be a name, and again, this is Jenkins security group 01. So we'll just give that, and we should be done with those security group rules. So now we got inbound rules, 4 of them. Any of these are just the security group tags. Anything coming from custom TCP going to port 8080, going to port 80, SSH traffic, and ICMP for initial testing from any source. And again, you want to lock these down, right? That's not a good security practice. So give it to a certain subnet or to your specific host. For now, I'll just leave that, and of course, this is going to be modified as soon as we're done with the video. So that takes care of our security groups. Now, let's shift gear and go towards EC2 service.